Okay.
Yep.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Good evening, and thanks for coming on this warm summer evening. My name is Chris Ireland. I'm on the board of directors for the Texas Photographic Society. Many of us on the board are here, so feel free to wave your hands or make yourself known if you are on the Zoom call. It is my pleasure to host this fourth edition of our TPS Talks. Just in case you haven't been to one of these before, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Scott. He will do his lecture, and then we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes of answering audience questions. You can ask a question on Zoom, or you can type something in the chat box, and I'll make sure that it gets asked if we have time. We do ask that you please mute your microphones during the main presentation. So maybe take a moment to check on that now while I introduce tonight's speaker, Scott Hilton. So Scott Hilton earned his BA in photography at the University of Nevada, Reno, and his MFA in creative photography at California State University, Fullerton. He is currently senior lecturer in photography at the University of Texas at Arlington, where he has been teaching since 2009. Before then, he has taught at numerous institutions, including Collin College in Plano and Frisco, Texas, the University of Texas at Dallas, and Austin College in Sherman, Texas. He was the assistant director of the Light and Sea Gallery in Dallas, Texas, and he was also a former member and president of the Venerable Dallas Institution 500X Gallery. Scott's work reflects his interests in the reinterpretation and recontextualization of history and in maintaining an intimacy with the analog traditions of photography. Project Barbatype, his collaborative project with Bryan Wing from 2014 to 2019, made tintype photographic portraits of competitors at Beard and Moustache competitions. Scott's still life project, the Rerum Natura, is a meditation on the tenuous but vital connections between language and sensation, or like the textual and the textural. Scott Hilton has long been involved with SBE, the Society for Photographic Education. He began as a member of the leadership board of the regional South Central chapter and is currently the chair of the national board of SBE. The Society for Photographic Education is an organization many of us here in academia belong in or have worked with in the past. SBE offers opportunities, resources, and an inclusive community to all types of image makers. The South Central chapter of SBE will be holding its annual conference this fall in October in Shreveport, Louisiana. So if you have any interest in SBE, just ask any of us really after the talk. So everyone on the board at TPS was happy to hear Scott would be participating tonight. So with no further ado, allow me to introduce Scott Hilton.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. Boy, hearing about all these things I've done now, I feel really tired. But we will get up and get going. It's funny. I totally forgot about 500X. It was such a big part of my life for a number of years, and I just completely forgot about it. But thank you all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and start up my screen share. And we'll just kind of get the ball rolling here. Okay, and that is not what I wanted to start with. No, not that one. There we go. Okay, and actually, let's just. I was in the wrong space. Okay, got to go all the way back to the beginning. There we go. Okay. Well, just to kind of start off with a couple of just sort of general comments. I am of the age that when I first learned photography, I learned it in the darkroom. I initially got my start in photography when I was a junior in high school, and I was the photographer for the high school yearbook, and I absolutely just loved that. Was hooked immediately. Loved working in the darkroom. Loved shooting, and just have been in a continual engagement with photography basically like ever since. And before I kind of get into showing you what I do, first of all, thanks to TPS for inviting me here. It was really kind of interesting, like throughout this week as I was like putting this together. It was kind of interesting to look back at some of the stuff that I've done over the past few years and really kind of reconsider it and rethink about it again. So I really appreciate that incredibly valuable opportunity just to kind of look back at what I've done and to kind of reconsider some things that I hadn't really thought about in a number of years. And I think you could say, like in the introduction that Chris said, I think on some level, the thing that I really kind of find my continual fascination with photography, it really just comes down to a kind of absolute wonderment, just that it works at all. Just that by this interesting combination of like glass being bent in a particular way, and then having some kind of means of record, the fact that that makes an image and then you can have something that records that image that gets made. I just endlessly find that basic fact just supremely fascinating. And then the very process itself of photography and how it works is just something that I never get tired of, and I find great inspiration from. And so a lot of what I'm going to show you today, really, if I had to say like where does it all come from, it just comes from my love of just the simple fact that photography actually works, and everything that it can do. So I'll go ahead and I'll start off with some work that I did. This is a series of photographs that I did about 2007 to about 2009. When I was in graduate school, that was really where I found my love of what's now called alternative process photography. The handmade photographic object is something that I feel a great commitment to and a great love of. And so this series of work these are cyanotypes. These are actually scanograms. So this was a project where I was kind of working in there's a long historical tradition of the botanical cyanotype going way back to Anna Atkins in 1843. And so I was interested in kind of doing something that was working in that kind of historical vein. And ended up kind of very much enjoying this process of basically just sort of going out into my yard and finding various different sort of sticks and plants, and then using the flat glass bed of my scanner to like kind of arrange them very carefully and then scan that. And then there's a process of taking that digital image and then printing it as a negative. And then that negative then is where I make the cyanotype. And I just really loved doing this process. There's just something about the pureness of it and the simplicity of it that I find to be like really engaging. And I just loved the fact that I could kind of make these images that had this wonderful kind of tactile feeling to them. There is something I think very, the cyanotype, of course, is it's one of the earliest photographic processes, and it is known for this very deep, rich Prussian blue color. And there's just something very kind of elemental and simple about the cyanotype that I just absolutely love. So this was a project that I worked on for about 2 years or so. And enjoyed it very much. I'm coming to sort of realize that this body of work that I did, this little project that I did a number of years ago, is sort of come back to me in some work that I'm going to show you much later. So it's very interesting how ideas, you have an idea and you work on something and then sort of has sometimes a long vacation and then comes back in some kind of new form. Then the next project I want to tell you all about, this is a project from 2010. This is called Excellent Specimens. And again, this was a project that I started working on. I had decided that I had seen a few examples of contemporary tintype photographs. And tintypes are a type of photography that is done on a metal plate that's coated in black, and then there's a fairly complicated procedure that's involved in creating a light sensitive surface using various different chemicals on the surface of this metal plate, and then you expose it in the camera. And so the real origin of this project, Excellent Specimens, is I had decided I was going to try to learn how to do tintype. I had all the chemicals, I had a camera, and I basically just sort of started very simple, just finding things around my studio and then setting them up on a table and then photographing them. And so as I got more into this, I was basically, trying to teach myself cyanotype. And as I was doing this, my initial sort of compositions of just taking little objects and putting them on a table started off like very, very simple. It just basically, one single object. And then I wanted to kind of start doing more things. So I started experimenting around with, like in this case, just, finding all kinds of different sizes and shapes of screws and making them stand up on end and then photographing them. And then I just kind of kept it in a very when I work this way, like in a studio, I like to kind of keep very loose. I really just sort of look and see what do I have at hand and what could I do with it that might be kind of fun or sort of interesting. And then I make these arrangements and little constructions of things, and then I photograph them. But like this one right here, this is a excellent specimen. It's just it's a bunch of 3-inch clamps that I kind of arranged in a little circle pattern, and then propped it up and photographed it. But I really just learned to I just absolutely fell in love with the tintype process. It is such an incredibly it's a very meditative process. It's a very deliberate process. It's not something that you can sort of just take up and do casually. It's something that really kind of requires an investment of time, and especially in this like very early learning stage, it's something that just really takes a careful consideration. And I found, that as I was learning how to do these things, I just loved kind of accessing a kind of meditative state of deciding what I was going to photograph and then figuring out how I was going to arrange it and then do things with it, and in the process of actually making the photographs themselves. So had a lot of fun working on this project, the Excellent Specimens. And then when I exhibited these, I wanted to do something a little bit special with them. So when I exhibited these, I made these little holders. So that's like a little plaque, little wooden plaque, and then that device that is attached to the plaque. It's actually it's a thing that's used a lot by folks who work on electronics and various other sort of hobbyists. It's called a helping hands device. And it's got these 2 little alligator clips and a magnifying glass. But I've got one right here, as a matter of fact. You want to see that? So here's my little helping hands device. So I do actually use them every once in a while. But they do have this wonderful kind of anthropomorphic quality about them, and they, and I liked the fact that these little helping hands devices did have this almost like gestural kind of quality, like it's a little being that's grabbing and holding the tintypes. So when I presented these, the Excellent Specimen series, I did them in these little helping hands devices. And then a next project that I started working on, it was a project called De Rerum Natura, which is a Latin phrase. It literally, it means on the nature of things. And the inspiration for this project came from, well, at one point I somehow became aware of the fact that there are 2 words. There's the word text, T-E-X-T, and texture, T-E-X-T-U-R-E. So text and texture actually share the same Latin root word. It's texo, T-E-X-O, which means to weave. It's the word for to weave. And I found that out. That text and texture both have their origins in the Latin term for to weave. and I immediately there was such a sort of profound kind of explosion of associations and concepts that just came into my mind as soon as I realized that there was this that word connection between text and texture, both meaning weaving. Is I think just something that really became very fascinating to me, and that really was sort of the origin of working on this project. So mostly what I decided to start working with is I have I have a love of books. Just books as objects, I think, are really fascinating things. And so I started working with like books and textbooks. I have a couple. I got a bunch of those sort of single volume encyclopedias, the ones that are about like 1,000 pages long. You know, they're about 5 inches thick and they weigh like 20 pounds. So I bought a bunch of those, and then just started kind of experimenting around with these books and taking pages and sort of ripping them out of the books and just doing these various kind of creative, almost like sculptural kind of acts with the books. And this is one of the first ones that I actually ever did. And this is from a book that was actually like, it was like a botanical book. I think it was about fish. And I just, in the opening pages of the book, it just had this little inscription. You know, the book is from 1898. And as you can see the inscription in it from the author, it says, "To my good wife and my 2 bonny boys, the companions of my leisure hours and my vacation rambles, I dedicate this book without asking their permission." And I just thought that that was such an incredibly lovely sentiment. The fact that, you know, that here in this book, like, over 100 years later, there is just this little dedication that this man made to his wife and his children. And so this is sort of like the introductory image into the book. This is kind of playing off of essentially it being a kind of still life project. I just, again, sort of continued to kind of experiment with just finding very simple materials and seeing what I could do with them that would make for interesting kind of patterns that I thought were evocative of that, again, that kind of central idea of the idea of text and of meaning being kind of woven together in order to kind of create the way that you sort of understand the world. And so I started just sort of experimenting around with various different, again, and kind of various different materials that I kind of had around in my studio. This is like a sheepskin, actually, that I had kind of lying around that I picked up somewhere. And one of the things that I really love about these alternative processes is the fact that they're really inherently kind of textural. There's a very tactile quality to a chemical photographic image that I think is just very, very interesting. And so I decided to photograph things that really kind of made best advantage of that tactile quality of the photographic project, of the photographic material itself. And working in these kind of physical photographic processes. So this one right here, this is called Egyptians Jerusalem. And so this one's kind of interesting. What I did with this one is I had this like single volume encyclopedia, and I ripped out about 20 pages of it, and then kind of glued them all together so that those 20 pages basically became, you know, something like a solid block of paper. And then I took an orbital sander, and then I just started sort of like grinding away at the pages of, you know, this sort of stack of encyclopedia pages. And I've got a second version of here that's a little bit of a kind of a closer up view, so you can see what's going on. So I thought this was like very, very interesting because, of course, the way that the text is lined up on the page is this kind of 3 columns. But with the way what I really loved about this is how, you know, this is like it's an encyclopedia. This is a book that is meant to be a kind of like repository of knowledge and of meaning. And I just loved the fact that by kind of grinding through the pages, that the meanings of the different things that are written on the different pages just become kind of mixed up and jumbled, and how on certain parts of this you can sort of follow the text, but then it dissolves off into that layer of information that was underneath it. And so I thought this was just a really interesting kind of visual phenomenon to kind of explore. This is another one from that series. This is actually, I got a copy of the old Gray's Anatomy textbook, I think what was originally published in like the 1880s, which is known for having these just absolutely wonderful kind of anatomical illustrations. And so I went through them, and in this particular one, I cut out all of the hands and feet that I could find in the Gray's Anatomy textbook, and then assembled them all into this like kind of somewhat 3D little collage, and then photographed that in a wet collodion negative. And again, I think that this is a really great kind of example of that kind of idea I was sort of chasing after with this project, of that textural quality of the image, and the textual quality of the information that's being related in there. And the title of this one actually, I really actually in a lot of these images, I actually put some thought into the titles behind them. And this particular one, I remember when I was cutting this out, I was really struck because the abductor pollicis is actually it's a muscle that's in your hand. The abductor pollicis is like, it's the muscle that's like right here. It's the muscle that allows your thumb to do this. Okay, it's this motion. Okay, and as I was cutting this out, I started thinking about that, and I think one of the things that's generally sort of credited with, like, human beings sort of having evolutionary developed all of this amazing stuff that we are able of doing, is because we have the opposable thumbs, right? It is the fact that we can grasp and we can manipulate. So there is this incredibly important action that we can do because you have this ability to grip things between your thumb and your other fingers. And I started thinking about that, and that really what is also equally as important is like the ability to grasp. Okay, but really what is also absolutely just as much as important is the ability to let go, right? Because if you cannot let go of something, then you cannot move on and work on something else. And so I thought about that, like the abductor pollicis. This is the muscle that allows you to like let go. And I just thought the metaphorical kind of associations that comes out because of that, I think is just really, really kind of fascinating. And then this is another one. It's called CYCL. And in this one, and again, I've got a kind of close-up version. Yeah, there we go. So I've got this close-up version, where what I did is I took like one page out of this encyclopedia, and then I cut out every individual word out of one of the pages of the encyclopedia, and then kind of reassembled them in this way. I was almost trying to think of it as like, if you think about like that, like, say, these words almost are like a something sort of floating on the surface of a body of water, and then they're slowly sort of descending down from that. And so I arranged them on this little, on my workspace, so that they kind of had that sort of quality of like being concentrated up on the top and sort of descending down. And I really just enjoyed working on this project very much, just because of it just got me really thinking about like language and the nature of knowledge, and the kind of way that you can sort of tease apart meaning and gather together meanings from different things. But it was quite a great time. Now, moving on from that, I had been, while I had been working on all of this sort of like, in my studio kind of still lifey type of stuff, I had also been kind of experimenting with doing portraiture. And I was getting very interested in the idea of doing portraiture. The tintype photograph, when it was in its heyday, like back in the 1850s to the 1880s, that's what most of them were done, is they were mostly portraits, because that's what people, that's what people wanted. And so I thought it would be very interesting to kind of start experimenting with portraits. I started off actually by doing like portraits of my students for like demos of like sort of showing them how the tintype process worked. So I would shoot photographs of my students. And then I was fortunate enough that I met Bryan. This is Bryan Wing. When I was teaching a darkroom class in Collin College, Bryan was the lab tech, and he and I worked together for about like a year and a half. And one night when we were kind of hanging out in the darkroom, I just happened to kind of mention about how I was, getting very, very interested in portraiture. And then Bryan mentioned that he had been a competitor in this sort of beard and mustache competition, this world of beard and mustache competitions, something I'd never heard of before. And that he'd always thought of doing a book. And so we were just sort of having this conversation where, I knew how to do tintype and I was thinking about doing portraits, and Bryan had this really fantastic idea of doing portraits, and he was interested in learning tintype. So it was just sort of a magical moment that we had this sort of melding of minds, and we decided, well, what the hell, let's just do it. And so this is the project that Bryan and I kind of worked together for about 5 years, Project Barbatype. So first of all, just to kind of explain a bit, I think that to kind of explain the work, you really need to understand. There is a large network of beard and mustache clubs that is really worldwide. Almost every major city has got like a beard and mustache club, and many of these clubs have beard and mustache competitions. And these typically tend to be kind of very raucous affairs. Generally, most of the time they're held in a bar, and they can be quite fun. But there's like several hundred of these beard clubs across the country. Most of which have some kind of a competition somewhere during the course of the year. So this page right here, these are sort of photographs from the, this is from 2017. This is the World Beard and Mustache Championships that were held in Austin, Texas in 2017. And as you can see, this was it was a pretty large event. There was it was about 2,000 people that were there. That world map that you see, all those little pins, those are the home locations of all of the people who come to the World Beard and Mustache competition. So you can see it really is a worldwide event. And I got a few short videos that I can kind of show you. I think that one of the things that's really I think interesting about these beard and mustache events is again, it's like mostly kind of photographing in bars. And so when Bryan and I would go and shoot at one of these events, we would normally go in and basically kind of find a nice little corner somewhere, and then we have to set up our entire tintype operation. Now this is, there we go. Okay. So this is just a little video right here. So this is basically like the first part of like shooting a tintype. That's me. I'm holding in my hand there is a piece of black covered aluminum. And then you take this, that's the chemical called collodion, and you kind of pour it over the surface. It sort of evenly coats. You have to kind of manipulate it in this very, very kind of careful way so that it makes a nice, thin, even sheen over the surface. Okay. And that white flash is actually our strobe lights that are going off. So then that plate then goes into the portable darkroom. So this is the portable darkroom that I made for doing tintypes. And you can actually, if you see that photograph on the right, you can actually see my legs in there. I'm actually there in the portable darkroom when this photograph was taken. but so the portable darkroom, of course, makes this nice little light tight space where most of the chemical stuff happens. And then I'll go ahead and I'll show you this video right here. So this is that's Bryan behind the camera. And so he's, setting it up and getting a framing and getting his initial focus on that. Okay. And then that's the holder that has a prepared tintype in it. And he pulls out the dark slide. And then you pull off the lens cap off the camera, pop the flash, put the lens cap back on, and that's how you shoot a tintype. There we go. Okay. And then the very last stage of doing a tintype is when you take the shot and process tintype, and it goes into the very last chemical, the fixer, the potassium cyanide fixer, and this is sort of the most spectacular part of the whole process. As you can see on this little video right here, when it goes into that last stage, it's a kind of creamy looking negative, and then as it sits in the fixer, it sort of slowly turns from a negative into a positive image, and it's really kind of a very interesting thing. So this is speeded up. It's a time lapse. The actual amount of time that's passing here is about 1.5 minutes. And since she's here, I got to give a shout out to Rebecca Ruri, who is here in the audience viewing today, who actually shot this video that I am about to show you. Okay, so that is that's the fixing process. So so the Beard and Moustache clubs, when we say that, okay, it's a competition, it literally is a competition. I think the best way to think about a beard and mustache competition is it's sort of like a combination of like a dog show and a beauty pageant. There are different categories for beards and mustaches, and each category has different criteria that they are judged on. They are actual competitions. There are judges. The judges score everybody, and the people who have the best beard or the best mustache, or they do the best styling on it, are the ones who actually kind of get the prizes. So this is our Project Barbatype photograph of Patrick Fett. Patrick Fett is he is a legendary beard and mustache competitor. That style that he's got, that sort of thin, long, off to the sides, that's called an English mustache. And as you can see, he was the world champion of the English mustache in 2013, 2015, and 2017. So he is and it's just it's a really fantastic picture. This is another gentleman. His name is Isaiah Webb. He is another sort of legendary beard competitor. He actually has a lifestyle brand. He goes by the name Incredibeard, and he is known for his really elaborate kind of sculptural creations that he creates with his facial hair. And I'm going to go ahead and come out of this real quick because I want to show you this video right here. So this is just a short, this is like a 17-second video of let's see if I can make this. Okay, this is a short 17-second video of Isaiah. So that video, he posted that in 2013. It currently has 1.1 million views on it. And it sort of launched him into beard fame. And he is also, had multiple kind of instances of being awarded of getting good beard awards. This is another one of the kind of major beard competition guys. This is Michael M.J. Johnson, and he has this what's called the cheek beard. And so you can see this particular style of the category of beard competition. It's called the freestyle category. This is where people do kind of use products in order to kind of do this very sculptural things that they do with their beards. This is sort of like the big glory category of the beard and mustache world. And this is Jason Kiley, another kind of top of the line beard competitor. He does this kind of a very elaborate sort of style where he kind of makes these multiple kind of loops of his beard. He's known for this kind of like circular, very linear kind of style of what he does. And again, he does these extremely elaborate things that he does with his beard. One thing just to kind of emphasize, at these competitions, these people that are competing in these, they spend weeks to months preparing for one of these competitions of practicing how they're going to style their beards. Many of them actually, not only do they have like the beard that they style, but they will develop like an entire persona that they will kind of adopt when they're up on the stage and when they're in front of the judges. And so it's really fascinating. It's very performative. People come up with essentially a character that they decide that they're going to like kind of play out. This is Edward Rose. We've shot him at several different beard and mustache competitions. All told, altogether, we ended up shooting, I think, like 22 or 23 different beard competitions over the 5 years or so that we were working on this project. So many of these folks that we photographed, we got opportunities to kind of photograph them like over and over again. So always loved working with Edward. Edward just has, I think, like one of the most he just had like the most perfectly proportioned head that I've ever seen on anybody. He just has this kind of skull structure that was just absolutely magnificent to photograph. And I really liked this. I really liked this image of him because he's of course he's got that kind of nose bridge piercing, and he is a very intelligent guy. He's a very interesting guy, and I liked this photograph because there is this kind of interesting kind of wistful sort of quality to his expression that I think came across like really nicely in this one. This is Michael Wallage. Michael Wallage he's from England. He was he was really fascinated. We got to shoot his tintype, and he was really fascinated by it. So he kind of hung around and was like chatting with us. And he told a story that I thought was just really incredible. He had made his living for years as a truck driver. Until one time he was a truck driver and but his real passion in life was that actually he was a bodybuilder. He was a competitive bodybuilder. And then unfortunately, one day he got into a really horrible accident when he was driving his truck, and it just crushed his spine. And he had a very, very long recovery period for that. And basically the doctors said, you cannot be a bodybuilder anymore. And he said he went into like a really kind of a profound depression during his recovery. And so while he was kind of going through this sort of very, very dark period of his life, he stopped shaving. He said he sort of stopped taking care of himself altogether, but he stopped shaving. And then after a number of months, he ended up having this like very long beard. And a friend of his who had been very concerned about just how depressed he was, saw that he had been growing this beard, and he was like, well, hey, I hear that there's this weird competition thing going on. So why don't you come and do that? And so he talked about how when he went to this beard competition, he said that it was really going to this beard competition was this thing that was sort of like the spark that really got him out of his depression. Because he just sort of loved going to events, and he loved having something that he could do that he could compete with, and he couldn't be a bodybuilder anymore, but he could still grow a beard. So he started entering competitions, ended up winning competitions, and then on the basis of winning competitions, he actually got a modeling contract. So there are billboards all over Great Britain with his image on them. but he was really just a wonderful and very sweet man. And then this is Arnie Bielefeld. And Arnie is kind of a legend in the beard community. He has won numerous awards. This was a kind of style. He called this his octo style of beard. And this was a style that he had for like many years, and he won many competitions with it. He is just a wonderful man and a very gentle soul. Also is a collector of 19th century beard photographs. So we had a number of really lovely conversations. But he is just absolutely beloved in the beard community. So another aspect of the beard competition community is all of these folks that I've shown you so far. These are all folks who can grow a natural beard. So there is a category of competition for folks who don't grow a natural beard, and that's known as the craft beard category. Now, since most of the people who compete in the craft beard category identify as female, there is a sort of term that gets applied to them. It's called the whiskerinas. So it's really kind of fantastic people that we met kind of doing this. So this is Holly Hurlmeyer in one of her beard competitions. We ended up photographing her quite a number of times. She was a sort of a great a source of a kind of expertise and inspiration for a lot of the craft beard competitors. She really developed a certain level of kind of incredible craft of what she did. This is Angela DeRico, who is actually from Austin. So this is Angela. Angela's character is Salvador Dali Parton. So when we shot Angela as Salvador Dali Parton, we kind of pulled up a couple of pictures of Dolly Parton on a phone, and we were trying to like get her to get into a pose that was as much like the portrait of Dolly Parton as we could find. But I think that ended up being quite a nice one. This is Angela Webb. This is the first place craft natural mustache world championships. Angela is actually married to Isaiah, okay, and was actually the person who kind of did a lot of his kind of styling. And then she decided that she wanted to enter into competition herself. And this outfit that she wore was just absolutely amazing. It was sort of very reflective and metallic and very shimmering. And those things, that sort of hair ornaments that she was wearing, those were like silver and shiny. It was really kind of quite something else. And I think it's just one thing that I just really kind of found like incredibly fascinating about shooting the beard and mustache competitions was just the astounding level of like creativity that the competitors kind of got into, and the way that so many of them kind of took this opportunity to do this like really kind of very silly and absurd thing, but they really took it quite seriously and put a lot of effort into it. So this is her name is Carrie St. Aubin. Her competitor name is Rocky Casbah, and found out that she is apparently the top scoring roller derby player in the state of Texas. And so you can see this beard that she has made is actually a beard that is made out of roller wheels. So that's sort of strung together and then sort of hanging from her ears. And then this is someone who actually several of you might actually know. Is a good friend. Her name is Colette Copeland. She's a wonderful artist and photographer and educator. And she got very excited by this sort of a craft beard competition, and ended up entering the competitions kind of as a part of like sort of extending it into like her own artistic practice. So this is Colette Copeland as Salome of the West Texas Dunes. And so Bryan and I did this project together for about like 5 years. It was really fascinating. It was really amazing. The thing that I got to say that I think was actually like the most satisfying thing about this was the incredible welcome and support that we got from this community of beard competitors. People just were just incredibly excited whenever they got the chance to kind of work with us. We had people, tell us many times that, when they heard that we were going to be shooting at one of these competitions, that they knew that they really had to like up their game, and they decided, they came up with new ideas, they came up with new concepts because they were excited that they were going to get a chance to kind of have us photograph them. A lot of the folks in the beard world, you can see these images down at the bottom. They also kind of take their interest in the competitive bearding, and they sort of founded their own kind of small businesses on them of like beard products. So we have here, like one guy, the Old Pimp Daddy Beard Company. And then down on the lower right there, that is one of the other kind of Whiskerina competitors that we photographed a number of times. And this one time that we photographed her, she was Bearded Frida Kahlo. So she came up with the Bearded Frida line of beard products, and used her tintype photograph as like the image that she had on her on all of her little bottles of beard oil. We had another photographer who also shot at the beard competitions. He approached us about the idea of doing a set of trading cards. So this is the Barbatype trading cards. Which 52 of them in a pack. And so this was a fun thing to kind of work on. So, and then, of course, being like working artists, Bryan and I, would apply for shows and get our work exhibited in various different places. And one of the things that was just really neat about it was because we'd met folks from like all over the country. So whenever we knew, when we found out, that we were going to have a show somewhere, we would let the folks in the local area know, and then they would go and kind of visit it. And so this is Holly coming visiting the image of herself that's up on the gallery wall. And it was just really kind of a part of this process that was, it was just incredibly touching and incredibly satisfying. To kind of work with these folks and just see the excitement in this and the enthusiasm that they had for the work that we were doing. And then, like Holly, when she went to this, she just posted this all over her social media and was like so excited. She's like, I'm in a gallery. And it was just such an incredible treat for her. So it was just a great project to work on for a number of years, and really enjoyed it very, very, very much. Now, one of the things that was kind of an interesting thing that we learned as we were working on the beard project is there's actually kind of quite a lot of sort of crossover between the beard competing world and the drag world, which at first you thought that may not seem to make a lot of sense, but actually it involves quite a lot of the same skills. Quite a lot of the same kind of, sort of dedication to like coming up with a character and the makeup and the preparation for it, and then being up on stage and kind of doing that kind of performing of a character, and really kind of the over the topness of it that is so characteristic of drag. It's also very much in the beard competitions. So so we did get to go shoot at the for 2 years at the Austin International Drag Festival. And again, the folks there were like really incredibly welcoming, and we're very excited to get this kind of very unique opportunity. There is something just really, really fascinating about a tintype photograph, and also the fact that when we had this whole operation there, it's so visual and it's so interesting, and so people just really became very engaged in the fact that we were just sort of doing the process itself, and they'd ask questions and we'd kind of get into these lengthy conversations, and it was really just kind of a wonderful experience. So this is a Complete Destruction, the drag character Complete Destruction. And that jacket, it's kind of a shame. These are, of course, are black and white photographs, but that jacket that Complete Destruction is wearing was like very, very, very brightly colored, really kind of astounding. Lana Dahmer and Jake Revolt, a couple that also do performing in drag. But kind of an interesting way that they both kind of created their drag personas to kind of play off of each other, both in terms of like the quality of the makeup and the way that they the costuming that they would wear when they would do their performances. Paradox Ray. This one was I was so pleased when this one kind of came out. That is a really kind of fancy headdress that she is wearing that is all made of a very fine kind of tulle fabric, but it was really just quite large, and it's also very red. Everything that she is wearing is actually very, very, very deep saturated bright red. She was quite a sight. Ben Flicker. This is Ben had actually before coming to the Austin drag competition, Ben is actually wearing his stash. That is the Mr. Gay Sacramento sash that he had won, I think, just a week or two before coming to the drag competition. You notice the letters are backwards because that's an inherent thing in the tintype image, is it's laterally reversed. So everything left to right, comes out backwards. This is Maximum Capacity, who is kind of an activist in the drag world, very well known, doing sort of advocacy work. And this is Mix and Match. And again, this was one of the things that I thought was really kind of astounding, kind of getting this opportunity to work with these drag artists. The typical sort of association of drag is, being as somebody, gendered male dressing up as female. And that is one aspect to it, sort of the historical kind of aspect to it. But drag has really kind of evolved enormously over the years. And quite a number of the people who were attending were actually sort of either non-binary folks or folks that would identify as women, but who then also their drag persona is also generally kind of more feminine. But it's really kind of much more about the costuming and the kind of craft of it, of creating a persona and creating the character, and then really like occupying that character when they're up on the stage. So then, of course, there's actually the Austin International Drag Festival. It is the largest drag festival in the world, held in November. We shot it in 2018 and 2019. So a bunch of these images that I'm showing you here are from November 2019. And so then, of course, we basically had to halt the entire project because COVID started, and then nobody was doing any in-person gatherings anymore. So we had to just sort of stop the entire thing. I kind of, given that, like everybody else, was kind of stuck at home and working on things. And I decided to kind of pick back up with the sort of older style of work that I used to do before I was really getting into the portraiture. And so the last group of images that I've got to show you, this is my new work in progress. I'm still working on this. I haven't yet quite decided what I'm going to call it. Several ideas that I've got in mind are, small dead things, or another one is objects of no significance. But really, again, kind of going back to my love of the tintype as a physical photographic object, and just the incredible way that it can render an image in a way that just really no other kind of photographic process actually does. And so I created a whole little setup here in my studio, and basically just started finding like small objects or dead insects mostly, and then kind of lighting them and kind of suspending them in midair, and then lighting them and then photographing them. And right away, I think one of the things that I was really sort of intrigued with about in trying to do this process, like a lot of the earlier work that I did that had that was kind of this object or like still life based things, I was really kind of sort of emphasizing the physical quality of the object by showing it in really great detail, which is, you know, something that actually a lot of these alt processes is very, very good at, is recording like very, very, very fine details. But for these, I really started to try to think about kind of playing around much more with like the kind of ethereal quality of the photographic image, the way that, like, you know, the chemistry itself, you know, always kind of creates these like what we call artifacts. It's the sort of little chemical inconsistencies that happens on the surface of the plate. And so, you know, and then photographing them very, very, very close up, getting that very, very shallow depth of field. And so I was really just sort of interested in kind of finding like small objects that I could photograph and just have them almost like look as though they're sort of dissolving kind of into nothingness. This is actually, you see, notice that this one is actually blue. The tintype plate that's most commonly used, it's again, it's a piece of aluminum that's just coated with a black surface on it. But it's actually the material that it's all made out of. It actually is it's the same material that's used like on a trophy, you know, like if you get a trophy and like the place where the name is engraved on the trophy, just this little piece of aluminum that's got covered with a color. And so this all the tintypers that work today, this is what we use. We use this like tintype, or we use this trophy metal, which does come in many, many, many colors. Most people use the black. All the ones that I've shown you previously, they use it on black. And so I got some of the other colors that you can get, and I started experimenting around with it. Now I've only actually exhibited these ones once, and I ended up kind of deciding on for this time I made like these little wooden boxes. So I, you know, kind of constructed and glued together these like little wooden boxes, because I very much actually loved the idea of one of the things that I really love about the tintype, and it was also something that was really exciting, you know, again, just doing the portraits for all the portrait projects that I was working on. There's something just really kind of engaging and interesting about the fact that it is just unquestionably a physical object. You know, most people nowadays see a photographic image on a screen. And I think that's amazing, you know, what digital photography can do and all of the incredible things that you can do with that. But there's always kind of something about an object on a screen. It always seems to be missing something, you know, that a physical object of a photograph has an incredible kind of intimate quality to it. It is something that, you know, even with the beard and mustache competitions, you know, it was a wonderful thing where I could, you know, make a photograph for somebody and then kind of get it all processed and then could physically hand it to them, and they could take it with them. And so I've been thinking about this project of that. That's why I decided to kind of make these little like wooden boxes for them, is that then, you know, the image then becomes like also an object, and it's also its own container. And there's just something I really I like about that I really just enjoy about that. It's also, again, kind of with the historical kind of connections to the fact that daguerreotypes, sort of the big process before, of any of you have ever seen them, but the daguerreotypes, when you would get a daguerreotype, they would come in these like really lovely, very elaborately decorated little cases that you would then open up. So I was trying to work with something similar along that. So again, this one right here is just a little wasp that I found one day. And then this photograph right here, that actually is a leaf from one of the squash plants that I planted in my COVID quarantine garden that I started. And then this one I was really pleased with. It's basically just a single piece of long grass that I pulled up out of my yard, and I meant to kind of photograph it, and I sort of forgot about it. And then when I came back the next day, it had wilted. So, you know, when I picked it up to work with it, it did this droopy thing. And as soon as it did that, I was just really struck by the kind of gestural quality of that line, that droop of the that piece of grass. So I set it up and kind of photographed it. And then when I exhibited these, this was I actually went to the surplus warehouse at the University of Texas in Arlington, and they had this lovely kind of almost like clawfoot round table. So I snagged that and then got a nice little tablecloth for it, and then use that as kind of a presentation. So I've got a few others here. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to come out of the share. I'm still working on these, still trying to sort of decide what I'm doing. The boxes that I showed you in the images before, this is sort of one of the original ones. It's a bit thick. I kind of at one point decided that this was a bit too large. So then I did a second batch of them. You can see the differences here in the size of them. So this is actually something a little bit more along the lines of like what a daguerreotype case was like. So it sort of hinges open, and then you can see the tintype that's there on the inside. So this one right here, that is that's actually a squirrel skull. Found a dead squirrel, decided to take it home. So that is a squirrel skull. And then I think some of these other examples I showed you, I kind of like this one. Yeah, I think this is one of the images. So this is the butterfly. And when I photographed the butterfly, it was that surface of the background, that's actually the surface of my softbox. So that's literally a light kind of shining into it. And then I was working on these the other week, and I decided, oh, well, if I photograph it in front of black, then that means all that lovely color is going to come out. So this is the kind of purple version that you can see, you know, kind of, it's kind of shining around there. It's very, very, very reflective. And then I've got one last one here. This is a locust. What do you call it? When a locust, cicada, after the cicada sheds its shell, they're all over the place. I see them now when I'm walking around. You see them attached onto walls and stuff. So that's kind of what I'm working on now. I really am enjoying working on these. You know, it's very interesting, you know, kind of thinking about this in a sense. I was working for years for so long on doing portraits. And then I was just sort of, after working on these for a while, I realized these are also portraits. They're just a different kind of portrait. They're just portraits of little things rather than portraits of little people. But it's kind of connected in a sense. And it's also interesting, again, it's one of the reasons I really appreciate getting the invitation to come here, you know, looking kind of at a lot of the work that I've done. You know, I think if you remember, like way back, I had the project that I did called the Excellent Specimens, where I was looking at things, and the you know, even shooting the beard competitions or shooting the drag competitors, it's sort of a similar thing in that each one of them is like a specimen, and kind of photographing and kind of recording. And so I guess just to kind of, you know, conclude, I you know, I think I'm just continually kind of fascinated by just the basic fact that photography works, that it does exist, that, you know, lenses do what lenses do, and chemicals do what chemicals do, and then you end up with this wonderful thing that is just astounding to look at, and really I find an endless source of inspiration and fascination. And I think also, you know, I'm calling this the Small Dead Things Project. I think it is kind of interesting about the way that photographs can serve as a kind of memorial of whatever you happen to be photographing. And there's something my thinking about this, I haven't exhibited this very much, but I'm thinking about this project, and I guess my thinking about it is kind of going to the point of like, you know, I guess on some level that like even the most small and insignificant of little items is still somehow worthy of like contemplation and appreciation. And that is one of those things that I think photography is very good at. That the experience of viewing something in a photograph, you know, something can be incredibly fascinating in a photograph. The most mundane thing that you would completely ignore and not pay attention to when you actually see it, when you then see a photograph of it, it can be incredibly fascinating. And I love that kind of almost mystical alchemy that kind of happens in a photograph. So that's about it for me. So do we have any questions in the chat, or if anybody has any questions about anything that they're wondering about?
Well, I just wanted to comment. Sorry, I'm just going to jump in because this has been so wonderful to hear some of this. What you were just talking about these, you know, your latest work. It's so resonant because last night my oldest sister texted me from Florida that she found a perfect dragonfly. So we had a lengthy. We've been chatting back and forth about how you know, her immediate thought when she found it was, how can I ship it to Anne? And you know, kind of like, and so we had this lengthy discussion of how to ship the Florida dragonfly to me, because she knows I'll photograph it. So this sort of notion of what I find so wonderful, and what's wonderful about the shift of your work during the pandemic, I think is so resonant in terms of what your kind of work with tintypes and the rest of it and the historic processes is sort of memorializing things and making the everyday much more important that old photography did. And then now we're kind of doing it again and shifting it back around. And the way we've had to shift gears during the pandemic and sort of the smallest things, like you said. So yeah, you're hitting all sorts of notes. It's been wonderful to watch this.
Well, thank you.
My wife calls photography real life comic books for adults. And I love how you use photography to recall specific moments in time in your life. And they're still quite vivid. It's like I was there with you as you're recalling these moments. So it's really cool. I really enjoy your work and
thank you.
The process. So.
Well, you know, I one of the things, like I was sort of kind of, I don't know if you could call it cursed or blessed with, you know, this particular type of brain that is just incessantly like considering things, you know, and it's, I think on some level, like the reason I photograph things is I just want to give something for my brain to just work on. And I love, I love, you know, the associations that can kind of come out of stuff, or you know, the way, you know, the way I might be kind of working on a project, and then some like small detail will kind of come up out of it, and then just completely flips the entire idea, and you know, it's almost like a new world kind of opens up. Here's a great story. So the Barbatype project, the very first time that I showed that work to anybody, it was actually at a portfolio review at an SBE conference, and I had done my first beard competition like a week before, or a week and a half before. I only shot about a dozen tintypes, brought all of them, you know, made a little portfolio box, brought all of them, and then sat down with a guy, fairly well known. I won't say who it is. Fairly well known guy, and I sort of showed them to him, and you know, kind of trying to sort of explain it a little bit about, you know, what this crazy thing is. And he just kind of like looked at me and he's like, well, this is just really kind of frivolous, isn't it? And I just was like, I wasn't going to let him get off on that. And I just sort of paused, and I think in about 5 seconds, I was able to kind of pull together like about 40 different ideas and slam them together, and it worked, right? And I knew that it worked like immediately. And I was just like, I think you're wrong. I think there's more to this than you're seeing in it. And I think it's this, I think it's this, and I think it's this, and I think it's this. And basically like that, what I just sort of came out with was like, I went and wrote it down, and that was like the first artist statement that I had about that work. And so I like, I tell my students that story that like, they are afraid of like getting criticism. And I say, it's like, sometimes getting a little bit of pushback or having somebody tell you that they don't like your work could actually be the best thing, because it just sort of forces you to like really, consider like what you were doing. So. Nope. I think, Robin, I think you need to unmute yourself.
There it goes.
Oh, and then you muted yourself again.
This is not a touch screen. I'm on a different computer.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay. I wanted to ask you about the pieces that you built the boxes for and mounted them inside of the boxes. I'm asking you about your thoughts or your rationale for going from the thicker boxes to the thinner. Was it to mimic the daguerreotypes that were in the little cases? Is that the only reason?
Well, that was partially it. Partially also like okay, so this is like one of those things like, okay, artists, when you've got a project like kind of in a very early stage, and I'm still sort of not entirely sure what I'm going to do with it. I'm not entirely sure where it's going to go, but I know absolutely for one thing that I want to do with these is I want to give them to people. I just want to give them away. And I think that the fact that it's sort of like, the smallerness of it, I just invented a word, smallerness. Okay. The smallerness of it, I'll go with it. Okay. The smallerness of it, I think there's something a little bit more, again, look at this. I'm not handling it like this. Okay. It's very tactile, it just makes it a little bit easier. You could like slip it into a pocket, it's a little pocket. I mean, that was the whole point of the daguerreotype cases, was that they were meant to be portable, right? They were meant to be able to, you could carry them around.
Right.
It was a keepsake. And I think that's what it was. I think this made it a little bit more kind of closer to like that sort of personal memento kind of keepsake thing that I was interested in.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I wanted to say awesome job on the concept of gesture, because on
the what?
Just gesture. The concept of gesture, we think of it so much as like a human thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you've made it into something else, and I think it kind of. I mean, I was just thinking about it. I was like, I think maybe even like depending on how you photograph a building, could possibly have gesture, but it's not in like it's not in the dictionary that way.
No,
but I love it. I think it's really
awesome. Okay, so here's like where I'm going to go off on like one of my weird ideas. I don't know a lot about this concept, but I'm really intrigued by it. If anybody's heard of it, it's called pansophism. And if I understand it correctly, the idea of pansophism kind of comes out of the idea that, well, okay, so like people like neuroscientists, like one of the things that neuroscientists have been trying to figure out is like, what is consciousness, right? Like if you have a brain and a being, and clearly you can tell when something has consciousness, right? You can tell that something has a consciousness, but the difference between something that has a consciousness and something that doesn't have a consciousness, like nobody's been able to figure out like what that is, right? Like your brain is this mush of stuff, your body is this mush of stuff. Somehow there's one kind of mush of stuff, that isn't conscious. And then there's another kind that is, but we actually don't have the slightest idea what makes one and what makes one the other. And so and apparently there is some actually like legitimate physics behind this. So one of the ideas of why you can't really identify a difference between a conscious object and a not conscious object, one of the theories about it is that actually there is no difference, or rather it's not so much a difference that one is conscious and another isn't conscious. It's sort of a degree of the difference of consciousness. And I just, you know, I am really intrigued by the idea that, like, you know, okay, like this bowl has a consciousness to it, you know, that exists on like some level, right? And I, you know, I mean, I there's no way to verify that. There's no way to prove that that is true. I do find that idea like really kind of incredibly fascinating. And so I think that, yeah, that is actually also a lot of the, you know, that's some of the thought behind this stuff, is this kind of idea of like, almost like even the most mundane thing still has some kind of, could still have some kind of like sense of being a being, you know. That's a long way away from where that question started, but you know.
I think through your photography though, you're kind of giving whatever you're focusing on that state of being, like almost projection, like a holographic projection of you to whatever object you're photographing at that moment. I think that's what's so special about photography is you don't really know much about the photographer who's behind the image, especially when you're scrolling through Instagram. But you sure are curious because all these images are so different from one another, even though they could be like a building or moss or like a shell of a cicada or something like that. Every image is different. And I think that's just the photographer projecting themselves on the image.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, it's funny. I've been, you know, one of the classes I'm going to be teaching in the fall, I've been actually refamiliarizing myself with my Barths, Roland Barthes, who of course had all these like really amazing ideas about, you know, the fact that like when you read something or when you look at something, what the only thing that actually exists there, like the experience of actually observing or considering, that is a joint act of creation between the thing being considered and the thing considering it. You know, it's not like there's no inherent meaning in the thing that is being considered, which is why people have different experiences of like looking at the same piece of art or reading the same book or watching the same movie, is because the experience that you have of the thing that you're watching is as much coming out of you and the experience of observing it as it is in the thing that you're actually doing, you know. And of course that's also like sort of one of those concepts that was like really profoundly revolutionary for a lot of folks when that came out, and yet on the other hand it's kind of also like really obvious that that's true. You know, it's sort of like, well, of course that's that way. You know, it's just, you just got to have somebody who finds the right way of explaining it before you go, well, oh, of course.
Yeah, I also think if you're a mathematician, there's that double slit experiment, or, you know, where you can observe light as a particle and a wave, but the mere sense of observation is what changes the physical property of light. And photographers play with light all the time. So, but we capture it at that moment in time. So it's kind of interesting. It's like we're capturing and observing a moment of a piece of phenomenon that should not occur. Like we should not be doing this in reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're capturing playfulness or if you're capturing playfulness or if playfulness is just part of your practice. But I get a very playful joy out of a lot of it too. It's that thing,
okay.
It's that thing where like you start to lose at like age 6 or something. And I see that. It's
Well, I think, like I said, it's kind of starting out, like for me, I mean, all right, like, okay, so here's like this textbook, I'm preparing my lectures and there's all this stuff in here. And okay, so I'm preparing all of my, brushing up on all my history and all my theory and all of that. And that's all important to know. Like you gotta have all of that. But still, at some basic fundamental level, the reason that I love photography is I'm just still astounded that it actually works at all. Just that images can be made and can be recorded. It's just the simple fact of that is just kind of astounding. And I try to always sort of have that in mind. And I like that. I like sort of keeping at a very simple level. Because if you just sort of like any photograph is fascinating if you're willing to engage with it at that level.
I'm going to jump in here real quickly because Chris had to step out for a minute. And yeah, I mean, I think so much of what you're doing is because you're elevating dandelions and wasps and, to the level of portraiture. That's kind of what we all, we're all working on some spectrum of that. One thing I do want to bring us around to, and then we'll have more time to answer other questions. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we were also intrigued about having you here tonight is to talk about SPE.
Okay.
Because one of our goals for these TPS talks is not only to showcase artists, but and a lot of the other work we're doing, but to kind of a little peek behind the curtain of sort of the nuts and bolts of how this photography ecosystem works, and the work that people are doing to kind of support photography and photographers all the way up, and wherever that lands to, because we work with organizations that work from elementary school photographers all the way up to as old as one can imagine. So we would love to hear you talk about that, because I think again, we and looking at kind of who's here tonight, we have a great cross section of people. Mm-hmm. But as we know, everybody comes to photography at different times in different ways. And I think it sometimes, and particularly now with the internet, and it's easy to drop in and out of things and not really know what the organization is behind it, supporting it. And certainly for educators, mm-hmm. which is massively important. Mm-hmm. I think we'd love to hear more about that.
Sure, great. So yes, I also happen to be the chair of the board of directors of the Society for Photographic Education. Been involved in SPE in various different capacities, and I've now kind of risen to the point where I'm at right now. I mean, SPE is the primary organization, sort of professional organization for photographic educators in the United States. We do have members across the globe, however, but SPE is an organization really sort of aimed at. We've been around for actually this next upcoming conference that we're going to have in March of 2023 will be the 60th anniversary of the founding of SPE, 1963. But SPE is SPE is many things. It's a professional organization. We do a lot of programming that is really meant for the benefit of photographic educators and photographic students. We have an annual conference, which we haven't got to do in person for the last 2 years, but we will be returning to in-person conference in 2023. And I think anybody who's been to an SPE conference can tell you just how fantastic it is. It is a sense of community. It is a sense of being able to kind of have people around that you can ask questions of and get feedback from. I mean, there's just nothing better than like being in a large room full of like 1,200 other people who feel as passionately about photography as you do. So a lot of the activities that we do kind of center around like the annual conference. It is a proper academic conference. So we have people who give presentations talking about their work. We have writers and theorists who come to kind of talk about their ideas about the nature of representation and the kind of current trends of what's happening in in photography. We also have, many opportunities for students to be able to kind of share their work with other students and also with other educators. And we have a number of lectures where we try to get like some of the folks that were really doing some of the most cutting edge and interesting photographic work and thinking about photography. So you get a chance to kind of hear from some of these really amazing people. SBE is a national organization. We also do have a number of the 7 different separate areas, which we call chapters. They're sort of different geographical regions of the country. So no matter where you are, there is an SBE chapter that also does events at the chapter level in addition to the national organization. We have a really extensive website where there are many different opportunities that you can look up. We have, extensive call for entry for if you've got some work and you're looking to get them in shows, you can go to the SBE website and you can find many opportunities or chances to kind of submit your work. And it's really, again, I'd say if I really just had to say the main thing about SBE is there's all kinds of benefits of what SBE does, but really when it comes down to it, it is the community, it's the people, it's the chance to kind of get together and bounce ideas off of folks and to kind of help and commiserate and make friends. There's 2 sort of legendary members of SPE, which I'm sure many of you know, as Susan K. Grant and Mary Virginia Swanson. And they have this amazing story about how they met as volunteers at an SPE. By the time that they met, they just got to chatting, and by the end of that conference, they both knew that they had like a friend for life. And the work I do with SBE, it has been a kind of a challenging time for the organization because of COVID. And I'm really happy that we are going to be able to have an in-person conference. My reason why I work with SBE is because I want 2 students to meet at the 2063 SBE conference and find their new best friend. That's what I want to have happen. I want the organization to be around and thriving that long so that can happen in 2063. So I'm working on it. Hopefully that's how it's going to happen.
All right, I'm going to mute myself. So who all are kind of members of SBE?
Who are members of SBE? Many of the people that are here in this meeting today.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, primarily, that's a great question. It's primarily educators at the post-secondary level. So that would be community college or university 4-year programs. We do actually have a pretty large contingent of student members. Actually, about 1/3 of our membership is actually students. It's pretty consistent. It's been consistent like that for years. So about 1/3 of our membership are students. We do have folks who are really like photographic historians. If any of you probably might be familiar with Liz Wells, who's been, a great writer and editor of a number of very, very important photographic books. She was on the board of SBE for 8 years. Just a wonderful, wonderful human being. Artists, educators, students, really open to anybody who just loves photography or wants to kind of be a part of the photographic community.
And where and when is the next conference?
The next annual conference is going to be March 16 through 18. It will be in Denver, Colorado.
Okay. And then you were talking a little bit about kind of like some other events kind of regionally. Is that something that happens?
Well, again, we haven't had a lot of in-person things for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Chris actually Chris could actually address that a little bit more. Chris is on he's one of the officers of the South Central chapter.
Yeah, we're currently trying to plan our fall conference. We usually have a South Central region conference in the fall, which is what, Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, not Alabama. Is Alabama in that region?
Yep.
I don't remember. Okay, Alabama. Sorry, folks in Alabama, and Mississippi, Arkansas. Anyway, the states surrounding
Louisiana.
And Tennessee.
Tennessee.
So all of those states we get together usually in the fall. We're planning a conference right now in Shreveport, Louisiana. So it's you're going to see some calls for entries, calls for scholarships, and all of that kind of stuff are going to be coming out pretty soon. You can follow the South Central SBE on Facebook. You can go to the national page and get that information. You can ask, like I said, anyone on TPS, usually has some of that information they could share with you, or you can ask me. So yeah, but that information will be coming out soon.
Right. Yeah, and so Scott, you were talking about Liz Wells. I'm just going to do a little plug here. Because Liz juried our TPS 30, y'all help me out, I think that's the right number, exhibition that we had recently, and we are thrilled, I'm just plugging TPS stuff now, that she's going to be in San Antonio for Photo September, and the journals conference, I'm getting the name wrong, but anyway. Photography, thank you. So we're traveling. We've kept that show. We brought it down here and put it in storage so that we could travel it to San Antonio. And it is going to be on the campus of the Southwest School of Arts and Craft, sorry, I go way back with that group. Anyway, it's going to be on their campus since they're merging with UTSA. Libby Rowe has been working with Liz. And so that show is going to be up during Photo September, and Liz is going to be there. And we're working on a reception. And so y'all need to stay tuned. This is going to be showing up in our e-blasts that come out. I think I recently let y'all know about kind of the general idea, but we're thrilled that we were able to travel the show to there, that Liz juried, and that she's going to be there for the reception. So we're delighted about that. And we're delighted with you talking about Liz. We're thrilled that she was able to jury this exhibition for us, and then that she's going to be here in Texas and be here for the exhibition. And related to that, we are also going to be having an exhibition during Photo Fest, and Marnie Schindelman, the juror for the Photo Fest, the award program, is going to be here for the reception for that. We just need to nail down. It'll be in early October. We need to nail down the dates for that. But yeah, all of this is sort of that wonderful synchronicity of kind of connecting some of these dots in terms of what we're able to do and what we're able to present.
Excellent.
Yeah, so pretty exciting.
Cool.
So does anyone else have any, wait, I see some chat things. I don't know if these are questions. If anybody has any questions, if you want to unmute yourself and ask them, please do. I see a lot of people chiming in with how that they're SPE members from 1994 and 1988. So I think they're talking about SPE. Maybe they're TPS members, but I'm guessing it's SPE. I'm guessing it's SPE.
Well, thanks everybody for if you're an SPE member, thanks for sticking with us.
I have one question, Scott. So how many watt seconds is that portrait?
Okay, so yeah, I got two of them right over here. I use a 4800 pack and full power, all one blast. It actually is just about right. I occasionally have to dial it down a little bit. But yeah, it's actually 4800 watt seconds at about, that distance. It's perfect for exposing a tintype. Just so y'all know, I mean, this is one of those fun little details of it. Like okay, here, tintype facts. You want to hear tintype facts? Tintype does not have a stable ISO. It varies. depending on many different things, depending on how old the chemistry is, depending on the humidity, depending on what side of the bed you slept on last night. But it averages at about 6, and that's a single digit number, 6. That's the functional ISO of a tintype emulsion is 6. Another interesting thing about a tintype emulsion, tintype actually, the majority of what you see in a tintype is actually not in the visible light spectrum. Let me just pull up one of these real quick, and it's actually not in the visible light spectrum. And okay, so one of the things, if you can see, like Michael Wallach, one thing you see is you see how bright his eyes are. A lot of what actually gets recorded in a tintype image is actually ultraviolet light. It records more in the ultraviolet spectrum than it does in the visible spectrum. So people with blue eyes, their eyes come out like super, super bright. Anything that's yellow in a tintype, like if it's yellow, it could be bright yellow in visible light, but it will come out as like dark on a tintype because it doesn't record that level of light. Now, one of the things that's really makes that a bit of a challenge is that ultraviolet light does not focus at the same spot that visible light does. So when I'm on my camera here and I'm focusing on something, of course, the only thing I can focus on is the visible light because that's all I can see, but the tintype doesn't focus at that level. And so over time, what you develop is this sense of like, all right, you focus the visible light, and then I just take the focus knob and I just know how much just kind of go that's going to change it to what the tintype's going to be in focus. And it's a very hard-earned little thing, but it's one of those things that I just kind of love about this process, the fact that I have to practice it enough that I know how much to just take a knob and just turn it a little bit so that it compensates for that difference. And then of course, what that means, like you look at the ground glass, that means it looks out of focus when you actually shoot it. So it's a very interesting, challenging little thing. And if anybody has any other, I can geek out about tintype for as long as anybody wants to keep listening to it.
I was thinking about infrared.
And I just had a quick question about the new work, which I really enjoyed seeing tonight. And I know you had to put a lot of light on top of the subject matter, but they seem to have a luminosity that was very special. Is there any light coming from behind those subjects?
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, like the ones that have... Okay, so the ones with the white backdrop? Okay,
Yeah.
with okay, that actually, I am actually shooting into a softbox.
Okay.
So that is a softbox.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's and I set it a little bit higher than it should be, so the light kind of diffracts around a little bit, and that's one of the ways that it was able to get. Yeah, I was really interested in kind of taking advantage of that, like ethereal, almost like an image that is barely there. And that's one of the things that I'm kind of working with is having that light coming like directly into it.
Cool.
Into the camera.
I like that work.
Thank you.
I see a few comments about infrared, I think. Is that, so any of y'all that made those, can y'all pipe up and unmute yourselves and ask your questions?
Yeah, no, infrared, tintype,
Is that what I was
It does look like infrared though, and I'm curious,
Okay.
how are they similar at all in the process?
Well, okay,
It's a
it is
different
similar.
spectrum.
All right, it is similar in the sense that, like, okay, infrared is recording light that you cannot see with your eyes because your eyes, human eyes, can't see it. Okay, ultraviolet is the opposite end of the you got the visible light spectrum of what you can see. You got infrareds over here, and then ultraviolet is over here. Okay, I'm horrible job when I'm doing. Okay, right. So it's ultraviolet is the opposite end of the visible light spectrum from infrared. So it's similar in that it is out of the visible spectrum, but it is the opposite in that it is on the other side. If that makes any sense. Oh, one thing actually also, okay, so like when we shoot the tintypes, yeah, it is a single pop 4,800 watt seconds. And it actually creates a shock wave. Like that's so much power that's coming out of that thing in this, like that, it literally creates a shock wave. So again, it's just one of these things that I love. It's like this tactile quality of this process, because even though it's like you feel the light, like you feel the weight of the light hitting you when you take one of these photographs.
Awesome. I also see another note, may or may not have been from Ireland over here, but somebody was worried that you were going to ask people to renew their memberships. So it may or may not have been him, but I'm just going to mention that if anybody here has been a member, needs to renew, I'm going to just do that because, and I want to thank everybody that's still on board, because a lot of y'all have dropped off. Thank you to all of y'all that have kind of renewed your memberships to be here tonight, because we really appreciate that too. And so, yeah, so I'm just going to say that if you have any memberships for anything, renew them, because all the organizations that we are still here after this pandemic, we feel pretty darn heroic and infinitely grateful that folks have hung with us and helped us going. So anyway, thank you. And that's also kind of why we wanted to have you, Scott, because we also want to kind of celebrate our fellow organizations, our peers, all the rest of us. We're all hanging in. And
I am in such awe of TPS and what this organization has done and what you've accomplished and all of the various different things. I think it's really astounding what you all have managed to do. And I can only imagine that you've had your own difficulties in kind of getting through and kind of keeping it running, and it is a great challenge to keep a large organization operating. But I think just the fact that, like, I mean, I know it's funny because when I talk about you all, everybody, when I talk about with other people and they think of like it's a Texas-based organization, and I have to be like, well, yeah, it's the Texas Photographic Society, but you all are a global organization.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, Liz Wells was jazzed to be coming down here and to be doing this, and we really do. It's occasional that we it's only a few things that we limit to a national audience for submission. Otherwise, it's international, and it is pretty surprising. And because so many of the juried processes, they really are blind processes. So our jurors don't know where the heck anybody is from. And for us, of course, being in Texas, we are just a wee bit proud that Texans do kind of step up and show up in these blind jurying processes. But still, it is really and truly international. So yeah, thanks for saying that.
Yeah, no, it's really astounding what you all have been able to maintain and what you've been doing. Just top-notch programming and really a great presence and a real asset to the community. I think it's great.
Thanks. Well, right back at you with SPE. So, anybody have any other questions before we call it a night? Okay.
All righty.
Thank you so much, Scott. Chris,
Sure
you want to chime in here? I've been, you're back now, so I can stop chiming in.
Oh, you're doing well, man. I appreciate you chiming in.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, well, we haven't scheduled the next one of these. So, partly if there's anybody that any of y'all are like hankering to see and to have a good chinwag with, let me know. Send me an email and let me know who you'd like to have us focus on. Because I think, I'm obviously biased, but I'm a geek. I'm geeking out at every one of these in terms of getting to have just a so I feel like it's a one-on-one chin wag with one of our favorite people. And so if there's anybody y'all would like to see, let us know.
And do we have the call for the members only show coming up? I just thinking about the time period.
It's going to be coming up, but we haven't really nailed that down yet, but it's
Okay.
going to be coming up soon.
All right, never mind then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any photo walks that are being, I don't know, promoted in the greater North Texas area?
I don't know. I'm down here in Houston, so I don't know.
Oh,
Maybe some of you, the rest of y'all can.
I haven't talked with Policon. I mean, they specifically do Polaroid. But I mean, they used to do kind of regular photo walks. But I haven't talked with him in quite a while. I'm sure somebody does. And you got a camera and you got legs.
well, right? I love photo walks in that they can kind of take you into exclusive areas because someone knows someone and they could take you in and give you special access, especially like the micro brew pubs, going back in there with all the chrome and stuff. So yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting thing to hear that okay, we're going to put our thinking caps on about that.
Yeah.
All right, folks.
I think that's it. So thank all of y'all for being here tonight, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you, Scott.
Okay. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.